Thanks everyone for coming to a late session. I know that there's always temptation to do cooler things, so much appreciated, and certainly appreciate the people that made it possible for me to come here. This is a great venue for people to share ideas, and you've heard a lot of them already, and there's going to be a ton more this week, so that's really exciting. But I just wanted to express that gratitude, especially. Just as a little background on me, I'm on the Pivotal Data Engineering team, and we're a geo-distributed team. So most cities don't, or most cities, if you have two or more people on that team in the same city, you're kind of an anomaly. Most teams kind of operate entirely across the globe and kind of across time zones, especially. That makes it very difficult. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's really important to communicate ideas, and this is exactly what this venue is for, so I'm very thankful for that. I'm going to go a little bit off the rails and make people mad, but I'm going to ask everybody to stand up first. Maybe move around a little bit. I promise that this is relevant somehow. Okay, cool. Yeah, we probably feel a little bit better now, right? There's probably been a lot of posting up in this room today. Yeah, do it. Let's keep it casual. That's kind of my preference. So I'm going to show a couple pictures, and we're going to play a game. The game is, if you think that the picture I'm showing you was created by a biological system, I want you to stay standing, and if you think it was not, I want you to sit. Or sorry, raise your right hand if you think it was a biological system. Raise your left hand if you think it was a physical system, like a creation of man. So the first one here. So right hands, or your left, I guess. Is this biological or is this technological? Okay, so biologicals, keep them up. Okay, you're wrong. This is technological, so sit down, please. Let's try this again. Who's left? Okay, cool. We still got a lot of people up. This is good. Is this biological or is this technological? Biological, so keep your hands up. Okay, everybody else sit down. If you don't have your hand up, sit down. This is biological. This is from a brain in a mouse that is having it's being stimulated by light, and then they actually kind of put this tracing fluid through the veins, and we're kind of watching it basically. And I didn't tell you what this one was. This is actually what, if you take Go router, so this is the thing that I started with this is the problem I started solving, which is how this was introduced. If you take the Go router logs and you look at communications between nodes, so it could be an application, could be servers, could be any of those things, and you kind of model that and you display it graphically. This is what comes out. So this is a fingerprint of your system. This is a fingerprint of Cloud Foundry running at a point in time, and it's built off of the response times between nodes. So when you have somebody ask you a question like, what does normal look like from a latency perspective? If you picture it, it looks like this. And this is a kind of an anecdote, or maybe more of a it's whiz-bang stuff. Like, this alone isn't really practical or useful, but there's data behind this, and I'm going to show some tools that can kind of let us dive into this and use this as an exploratory framework. So last one, biological, put your hand up. If you think it's biological or technological, if it's biological, put a hand up. Let's do it that way. Okay, this is technological, so sit down. This is actually the Bitcoin network. So we just did a demo last week at AWS reInvent. A few of us and our marketing team put together this. It's basically a system using some fraction of the tools that you've already seen a little bit today, and we were basically consuming that data and then doing some kind of deep analysis on it and then surfacing it back up. So my guess is, and this is kind of not something you can easily check, but at least in this particular example, because you can't join it back, but this is probably one of the biggest exchanges for Bitcoin, and that's why you see a lot of routes kind of tending towards that. So it's purely based off transactions on the network, and we were able to produce these kinds of interesting artifacts. They're not that practical by themselves. I appreciate that, but I just wanted to open with that. This is the kind of stuff that if you can look at your systems at this high of a level, and then you can then drill down, you can answer some really, really hard questions. And that's really what I'm showing you a way to do, basically. So let's see if this is going to work. I don't know if it is. As an example of taking this practical, there's some folks at Netflix who had a really hard time deciphering some of these big system problems, and so I don't know where I got lost. Oh, here we go. They built a tool to do some fraction of this, making it useful part. So when that's done, it looks like this video, if I can get it to play. Forgive me. Can we play this? No. Okay, I'll show that last. We'll come back to that. But it's basically, if I can get it to stick, which I don't think I can even do that. If you can see this picture, sort of, what it's showing you is basically 3 AWS regions, and it's showing you in the middle. You can't see it because it's hidden by the play button. That's the firehose that Netflix is basically consuming. It's all that traffic to stream all that video and all that content, and they need to somehow be able to visualize that in an intuitive way. So this is an intuitive representation. When I show this later, you can actually click and drill down on these regions, and you can get then to a service level. And then you can click on a service, and you can drill down, and you can see interesting things about that. So you can start from the highest level of visibility of your system, and you can drill all the way down to actually see what is happening. So when you're running a system at the scale like Netflix does, this is critical to be able to start at a high level and then very quickly be able to drill down, but also do it in an intuitive way. Because we want to work with stuff like this. Like, obviously, SQL queries are what's going to enable this, but SQL queries or some combination of data stuff is what enables that. But that's what you really want to start from if you're having to solve some of these really hard infrastructure type problems. So I'm actually going to skip through this stuff because I went off the rails already. This is really the big thesis of my talk, though, above everything else, above the stuff that I'm going to show you and the stuff that we've built. It's really important to keep in mind, in my opinion, that the tools alone are necessary, but they're not sufficient, right? So you can't just go to the store, buy a box of tools, and even buy just the raw resources and like leave them in your front yard, and then all of a sudden you have a white picket fence. That's not how it works. You have to also really pay close attention to how people interact with those tools and make sure that you have tools that elevate people's capabilities, essentially. So we as technologists, and I think all of us in this room are guilty of it, we really emphasize tools a lot because we know that tools are this multiplying effect of our capabilities. But I'm arguing that we actually need to think about the people side of this a lot more as well. And that's actually, I think, where most of the scaling problems are coming from, is that we haven't really figured out optimal processes with the people that are using these tools. So that's the thesis. And this, in my world as a data engineer, this manifests with this problem. So I don't know anyone who found this blog post from Monica Rigatti. It's fantastic, and it's just a few minutes read, but it gets straight to the point. And her thesis is basically, we read headlines at this top of this pyramid every day about the amazing things that neural nets can do, or AI, or even more traditional machine learning. The capabilities are there for sure, but what is sometimes forgotten is this entire pyramid of work that's required to support that. And we've seen just the gentleman before me, Millen, was kind of speaking to some fraction of this, where if you can make parts of this easier, then you can get people to the top of the pyramid faster. But the reality is each of these requires some team or some kind of balance of process and team to execute fast and to be able to iterate fast. Because I think most folks at this conference are in that frame of mind where it's like a microservices world, it's a cloud native first world. So that basically implies that you have fast iteration cycles. So you have to have good process and good people at each of these layers, or that own enough of them to really deliver on the maximum value of something like AI that comes at the top of this stack. So, and the other thing so one of the things that I've been hearing more of in my interactions with customers, excuse me, is, we understand that the tools is like it's a mile wide and an inch deep landscape, and maybe some cases a few feet deep, but it's really complex to navigate that space. But where they're really having the challenges is how do you do something like agile data science, agile data engineering? What does that look like? How do we apply the practices that we have been able to really ramp up software development like lifecycles? How do we apply those to the data side of these problems and really get some of that really fast growth, and get some of those high value ideas surfacing up faster? So my contention is that you have to solve the team problem, and you have to consider this whole stack in order to get to that level. Now, speaking of tools, how many folks have seen this picture behind these icons here? Not too many. Wow. Okay, so when I said a mile wide and an inch deep earlier in the data space, this is the picture that I'm thinking of. This is actually from middle of the year sometime. It looks like, there's some links on there, and I can put these in references. But basically, my argument is that as a person, trying to deliver business value somewhere, which is really what that's what IT was. That's has always been the promise of IT, is to like modernize businesses and bring these digital frameworks and tools kind of forward to speed up that time to value. And that's a really generic thing, but I think we can all think of very specific examples where if you could only drive a slice through this, like you can connect 4 of these data sources in these tools that we're licensed for, and then expose them to these users in this way to get the thumbs up. That's really what you're trying to do. And this, having a landscape this wide, is really hard to navigate for that reason. Like you just need a few examples of like what do my competitors do? Maybe you model off that, or maybe you read some blogs, or you find some code and you're like, that's the project I'm going to model off of. But it's really hard to just start from nothing and just say which tool should we use, and then look at a picture like this and try to like navigate those waters. It's really, really hard. It's really hard to keep up and stay educated with the value of each one of these things. So what I'm going to do is show you how I solve this problem, and I'm also going to make specific mention of the things that drove me to the solutions that I chose. One of them, I think, is back to my point of cloud native runtime. You have to have the ability to deploy this thing in multiple places. I need to be able to prove things out on my VM in my laptop. Then I need to be able to prove it out in a test environment, and then I need to roll it out into production. And each one of those things could have a different deployment characteristic. So I need my tools to be able to handle that, because otherwise I'm impeding my own workflow. The whole point of the cloud is, again, to go fast. And there's steps to the cloud costs real money, and sometimes a lot of it. So you have to know where to draw the line to not overuse that, but you need to not be slowed down either. So this means you need to be able to run this stuff pretty much anywhere. Java has solved this problem in a lot of cases, but there's a lot of tools on this map that do not have this feature. And so we need to keep that in mind. Like, again, this is a kind of a spill out of my brain and my thought process. Another big thing is community. Sometimes I jokingly tell people, I literally just find the right bits of code on Stack Overflow and provide a nice high level, that makes sense, and then I knit those things together, and then that becomes the value that I add. I don't necessarily develop something net new, like a new algorithm or something very kind of fundamental in a system. I'm usually stitching stuff together, like round peg, square hole. I think that data engineering in large part is just that. It's stitching things together. So you need communities behind the tool that you use, because you're not always going to have the answers. And when you need to ask a hard question, how to do a certain thing, you need a community to back you up for that. And lastly, and maybe I should have probably had this one first, although the first one has elements of this, is user experience. So if my workflow is inhibiting me and it's slowing me down from going as fast as I can go, then I chose the wrong tool. If I find myself doing things below this conceptual value line, where value line, anything above that is the thing that gets you a raise, and anything below that is the expectation that you have to do. It's nobody gets raises for database backups, right? So you need to be able to get that part of your job handled very well, and then you need to find ways to attack high value problems above the value line that maybe bank on the fact that a database, if it crashed, would be backed up. So this user experience of being able to just drive straight into value very quickly and get things built fast, that's critical for someone like me that wants to go that fast. Not everybody does. So these are the kind of attributes that I was looking for. I kind of highlighted, and you can't really see it, and it's not really the point too, but each one of these little black highlight areas, I was able to basically pull some feature from that section of this space into this solution. And what the solution in a conceptual mindset for me is this a mountain? So every business, even every individual in the room has a mountain of their stuff, their digital stuff, and you might want to do interesting things with that. Certainly businesses do, individuals for sure. I actually I like it when Google tells me you spent way too much time on the phone last month. Maybe you should figure out how to say no to more phone calls. I don't know if my boss is going to get on board with that, but those kinds of insights about helping me tune where I spend my time and how I kind of interact with the world and my professional space. It feels like this big mountain of stuff, and you don't know where to start mining for gold, right? So it's a little bit of this journey, but once you've figured that out, you kind of put it through a magic box, and then out pops something that looks like this. And this first one here, the clear the clutter, I literally found that this morning, and I was like, this is brilliant. I have to put this in there. I've been taking random pictures of stuff, it looks like there's some expense report stuff in there. There's actually something that I shouldn't even have on the screen that's personal related, but not that bad. It's basically saying, you probably don't want to just keep this stuff around. I'm not going to go around showing my colleagues that are here, from overseas this week, about the stuff that it's telling me I should probably clean up. So like this is a pretty useful little feature, and it hit me in the face this morning. I was like, that's what magic looks like when you do these data, when you solve this data stack well. You can provide users features like that. There's one behind it that's AdWords. I spent some time with my friend in Oakland this last weekend, which is great, and he's kind of given me a flavor of his world. He does a lot of this like targeted marketing campaigns, which is like huge amounts of A/B testing, and you're given a budget and you need to target those ads in the best way possible, and it's a very data-driven problem. And if you do well at this, you can actually measure like tangible outcomes. You can measure more downloads, you can measure more signups, more people engaging with your product. This is what they call like performance marketing is the term that he gave me to use. Like that kind of capability, to get to that level, that really simple picture in an operational way, like a SaaS product, is really, really hard to do. That's really hard to do. It feels like magic when a user interacts with this. So I'm trying to like show you where we want to go, but also like give you a good pattern or set of patterns and some opinions, which surprisingly somebody told me I don't have strong opinions, and I'm like, wow, nobody's ever told me I don't have strong opinions. I'm giving you some of my opinions and some patterns for realizing some stuff like this, or at this caliber, right? This is the stuff that you would go to if you treat a toy thing that you built as a product and actually like delivered it. And these guys do it. So, you know, this kind of looks like an evolution. You know, this is something a lot of us do already. You got generic reports, tell me what happened. Look in the past, summarize it, give me some data points, I'll use that to make a decision. When you get a little bit farther along, this is a little bit into this performance marketing bit, you can really start to engage with your audience, you can engage with your customers, you can engage with those folks in a selective way, because it's not useful to run, as an example for a campaign, like an ad campaign or a mail campaign, it's not useful to just broadcast a wide net where your likelihood is small for each one of those. You want to find the segment of the market that you're after that increases the chance that it'll actually drive value for you, because otherwise you're just wasting money. So this is probably something that's slightly more sophisticated than tell me what happened. This is tell me what happened and give me a little bit of an idea about where I should be focusing my energy next. And then kind of the last stage of this, right, is this loyal, this digital relationship. And this takes form in many ways, but like I'm pretty much addicted to the services that Amazon provides me because I don't have to think when I interact with them. It's just the user experience is so good and everything feels like such magic. The recommendations are always spot on. I will continue a loyal digital relationship with Amazon, shamefully probably longer than you should. Like you should always be kind of checking your retailers. But the point is when you get to a point where you're sophisticated with this is what happens, and your customers they're just so loyal to you, they'll do anything. You know, they'll even be an extension of your marketing to a degree if you get this right. And that's because they really value what your product is doing for them. So this is my next step off of that, is like I'm basically challenging all of you as technical folks and as business leaders and as marketing folks and whoever is in the audience. Like I'm challenging you to do digital introspection on your org. So this takes a lot of different forms. I already talked about the ad engagement stuff. We've kind of teed up this infrastructure bit, but that really kind of caters to an operator's mindset, which maybe some of us are not. There's some other interesting ways to do this, though. I was thinking about this back to my point about geo-distributed teams. You know, the only way we can communicate other than venues like this is to create little screen recordings of each other and share those around. And you never really know unless you get a really good team that's really good with giving feedback, which is historically pretty hard. And everything's asynchronous, so maybe they get to it in like 2 weeks, and so you don't really have ability to include their inputs. But if you were able to look at say your Google Drive docs, if you use Google Apps Suite, and you said these are the 10 most popular presentations of all the sales folks in the entire business, that's probably telling you something about the content that's behind that data. And so being able to do this digital introspection at an organizational level could really help you fine-tune content for people that are looking for that, or even just say something about the state of your organization and the types of content that you create or how it gets consumed. But you basically take all this stuff, right? You can take a million examples of this. I could point out like a streaming video stream from Facebook Live is maybe one of these buckets. Another one is like some log data from like Apache web server. Some of it's Cloud Foundry logs, and I stuff all this stuff into a funnel, and I throw some tools at it, and it looks basically like this. And again, this is very superficial and very high level, but if I'm fast, I'm going to get to a demo where I can show some of this functionality. But basically, you have a large number of stuff, and this is showing a homogeneous situation where it's all just network routers, because that's one of the first things I started with. But you could conceivably have this be any number of different data sources. You have this ingest pattern here, and this is what's not emphasized on the slide, but this whole ingest portion here is a pattern, and the way that you implement the pattern is you stand up a team for a given data source, and you say, here, you're gonna basically, your inputs is this data source that we care about. I don't know if it's Salesforce, I don't know if it's like a Kafka topic, or it could be like, you know, some spreadsheet even that exists somewhere. That's your data source, that's your contract. You consume that, you do whatever is necessary to normalize that, and then you send that along to the next team. And the next team does some of the stuff that you've been hearing about today, which is really fancy stuff in the caching layer. And you know, in this example, I've chosen Gemfire, and you've seen the capabilities there, but you have another team iterating here. So you have teams at the ingest phase, teams at the caching phase, and then you have another team at the persistence phase. And in a data warehouse model, like this means some amount of DBA, some amount of data engineering, some amount of data science. You have product owners on all these things. You run these things like agile teams in each little unit, and you drive contracts between them to make sure that you can continue to iterate without tight coupling. And if you can implement that, then you can go really fast, and you can start pulling in a large number of data sets, data sources, like disparate data sources that are different formats from different providers, and you can funnel it all into a single kind of cognitive capability. That's really what we're getting at here, is like you want a cognitive view of your organization, and that you don't want to be restricted by what you can bring into that framework, basically. So you need patterns to scale this, because if you do these problems one-off every time, you end up just creating more technical debt for yourself, and you end up throwing that stuff away down the road anyways. So I think we've all seen that before. So here's a couple teasers, just to placate what I put in the body of this talk. This is one example of something that we were able to do just by looking at logs. So the challenge was, there's nothing interesting in application logs in Cloud Foundry, and I thought, maybe you're right, but trust but verify. So I looked at this, I stuffed all these records into a SQL database, and I found a split point where it's like, I can clearly identify a break in the logs where a stack trace follows. And then I take that stack trace and I kind of do some shape shifting on it and munging on it. And what I do is I spit out this graphviz dot format. This is a static version. There's plenty of libraries that can actually take this and make it more interactive through D3, or you could do it through Java. But the point is like, having this capability to look at your code if you're a developer, being able to see this view of your code. And this example is not a really good one, but if you're having really strange bugs and really strange stack traces, at a minimum, this is beating you at this endless scrolling through the screen to say, oh, here's the caused by string, and then what follows that is usually like the best evidence I have for what to start to pursue to fix the problem. This is short-circuiting that entire thing, and the only thing that I haven't implemented feature-wise here is like the red box around the thing that caused the problem. So that gives you the class to really hone in on, and maybe the line number. And this you can abstract even further. But for a single developer to get straight to the answer on a stack trace in a quick cycle, they're spending less time scrolling the screen, more time getting right to the bug, like instantly. So that's one example. This is another example. This is more geared towards an operator persona. So we've had some customers really challenge like how well we understand our own software, because when you get to a certain scale and it looks like those pictures, that's really hard to like get your arms around, especially when you're talking about how many different dimensions. So one question that you'd want to know is like, what is the health of a given thing? And there's plenty of off-the-shelf tools that have this capability for sure, like a polished ready UI. But my contention is you want to be able to do that level of introspection within your org, within your expertise, and you want to be able to build teams around that capability, because that will drive you towards a data-driven mindset, rather than just purchasing off-the-shelf stuff and then not following up the users to make sure that the user experience is what it needs to be, that they can get the work done that they need to get done. So this shows you for every Diego cell, basically what is the average latency of all applications that were ever deployed to it. And the other thing that this is doing, since it's operating at like a network level or a systems level, it doesn't even matter if you've instrumented your code with any of these fancy libraries that are able to get this stuff for you easily. This is going lower than that, and so you can actually find more interesting nuggets inside of here. I don't know what these anomalies are out here where there was some endpoint that took 140 seconds to respond. That's not really the point of why I'm showing this slide. The point is that if you can consume the data and get it into a nice structured form, you can start to ask really high-level questions like this. Like, if I push another app, is that Diego cell going to fall over? You want to have some confidence around that, so you have to start instrumenting stuff. So those are just 2 examples. And then this is a very rough sketch of in my mind, as somebody marketing what this idea could manifest into, and some of these things have been realized. You're building a product around your operational data points, and I'm claiming that you should do this internally because you will be able to increase your overall velocity by understanding how your systems function and where they don't work well and where they do work well. Being able to have that data first mindset is critical. And so this gets consumed a number of ways. Certainly there's pretty UIs. I pretty much stole this entirely from PCF Metrics, which is a really awesome product. This is saying oh, we could do metrics with logs, which is one potential way to use this information. Another way to do it would be to expose it through a REST endpoint, which I think is actually the bigger point of this is you want APIs between these integrations. So REST endpoints are pretty good for that as it is. So you should just use those. And we know how to build REST endpoints. That's not a hard data engineering problem. And we know how to write SQL, and we know how to put all that stuff in a single Spring Boot application. REST endpoints and data APIs are really nothing new. But we don't seem to do it as much as you find in these bigger companies that are basically externalizing these very high-value services like machine learning as a service and image detection as a service, face recognition as a service. They're exposing that level of API, and we're still, in large part from my experience, we're struggling to get this right internally in intranets. When we have it working well in intranets, we don't have it in intranets yet. So this is making a big case for why you should do that. And lastly, I think the most interesting one is doing things with WebSockets. WebSockets is a great abstraction or a great method for communicating front end, back end, and the front end can pretty much be whatever it wants, and the back end can be whatever it wants. And so you have this way of this two-way communication without really doing a lot of work because there's a lot of good boilerplate code. This is where things like Spring really help you. And so part of the pattern that I'm showing here that wasn't really clear before is all of this ingest and at least part of this cache stuff. This is all running on Cloud Foundry in the same system that you're already getting these benefits from. So you're basically handling the data pipelining portion of your workflows, but now you're doing that in a platform that makes a lot of stuff really easy. And so I'm going to show some demo, and hopefully this works. How much time do I have actually? Very few minutes? Like 0 minutes. All right, I'll do this instead then. If you really are interested in this, come talk to me. I'll show you the demo right now. In the time that it takes me to set that up, you could probably get to the front. But otherwise, that's the talk. I appreciate your all's time, and please come talk to me or reach out.